Hey everyone and welcome to another Warframe video. One of the things I love doing is going back and checking out Warframes I've not played in a while, and then basically rediscovering them. This last couple of weeks I went back and checked out Harrow, and I've been having so much fun with him, which is when I realised I've somehow never done a video on him, which actually is kind of crazy. Harrow is a frame that is a key part of the Chains of Harrow quest, as the name sort of suggests, with his blueprint coming directly from completing it. No spoilers here, but it is one of the best quests in the game by quite a long way. I absolutely loved it. As for the rest of the parts, his chassis comes from corrupted Fissure enemies, so if you open a lot of relics, you're going to have tons of these. His neuroptics and systems are slightly harder to get, however. The systems are in Rotation C of Defection missions, and the neuroptics in Rotation C of the Kuva Fortress Spy missions. Like all other frames, Harrow is all about his abilities, so before we take a look at his build, let's quickly go over them. Unlike a lot of frames though, his abilities are actually really rather simple. First ability, Condemn. It's a fairly nice crowd control ability where he's going to swing his Thurible and send out chains along the floor for 20 meters, and that will capture any enemy in its path for 6 seconds. As you can see, that's some pretty decent crowd control right there. But it also works to help restore your shield too. 150 shield for each enemy that's captured by the Condemn chains, which synergizes super well with his second ability. Condemn is affected by all mods too, the restored shield by power strength, the chain wave by range mods, and the duration of the capture by duration mods. That's honestly all there is really to this ability. It's really nice for a quick burst of shields if you're low, or if you want to try and build up some overshields for you to get more duration on your second ability. It's really solid, and well, especially if you're using it for crowd control in like crowded corridors, it can be some really nice crowd control when you're in a bit of a pinch. I think it is one of the better first abilities in the game because it never falls off. Crowd control is as useful at level 1 as it is at level 1000, so it really is something I like a lot. But as I said when I was talking about it, it synergizes really well with his second ability, which is Penance. Basically, Harrow hits himself twice with his Thurible, sacrificing all of his available shields for an array of bonuses. It gives you, at base, 70% reload speed bonus and 35% more fire rate, which is rather amazing. But not only that, it will give lifesteal on absolutely everything. 5% of any damage he does gets converted into health, not just for himself, but any ally within affinity range. The duration of the ability is directly affected by how many shields you sacrifice. You've got a base duration of 4 seconds, and then you get an extra 1.25 seconds worth of duration for every 100 shields that you sacrifice. This ability, however, is actually only affected by 2 of the 3 mods that normally affect abilities. The duration, which is both the base duration and that bonus, is affected by duration mods, and then the lifesteal, reload speed, and the fire rate bonuses are affected by power strength. It's another ability I find super useful, provided you're doing constant damage. You are constantly healing all your teammates around, provided they're in affinity range, which can be really good if you're at lower level helping players, which might not have access to all the self-healing stuff. But not only that, the bonus fire rate and reload means that you actually can pump out some serious damage with a lot of weapons. That can actually make you heal more and more often, but also synergizes really well with his third ability. And honestly, you're starting to see a pattern here yet. Combine this though with weapons with long reloads too to replace mods, stuff like the Supra, the Sobek, and the Strand Wraith, and you have an incredible output of damage. This ability really is absolutely fantastic. Just like Thurible, that is his third ability, and honestly, it's another fairly simple one, although the maths behind it can be a little confusing when you start delving too deep into it. Once you activate your ability though, Harrow will start swinging his Thurible around. It channels all of his energy into it. While it's channeling, you'll see a counter on your screen telling you what the effect is going to be once you stop channeling. This number is how much energy you are going to be getting back per kill once you've stopped channeling. Then it's just a case of killing to your heart's content and regenerating energy like crazy. However, if you kill with a headshot, you will get a 4 times multiplier. Basically means that energy amount is going to get multiplied by 4, and that's the amount of energy you'll regain. This actually means that accuracy really is king with this ability to get the most out of it. This ability is affected by just about everything though. Power strength affects the drain, as well as the energy received back. The base duration of 35 seconds is affected by duration mods, and the range of the aura, which is at 20 meters base, is affected by range mods. If you can keep killing effectively and efficiently, you will easily keep yourself at max energy pretty much constantly, plus helping out your team with some additional energy too. It's a properly solid ability. His fourth ability, which is Covenant, Harrow's going to basically cast a protective energy over himself and anyone else within affinity range. It makes them invulnerable for 6 seconds and absorbs any damage that would have been done, and then turns that into a critical chance buff for the next 12 seconds to everybody in range when he casts. The crit chance buff is an additional 1.5% per 100 damage absorbed, up to a maximum of 50%, as well as giving a huge headshot multiplier of a max of 200%. The important thing to note is that this is an additive critical chance too. So a weapon with 10% crit chance will have 60% with the Harrow crit buff if you max it out, or 260% basically if you get a headshot. Range actually doesn't affect this ability at all because it relies on affinity range. Power strength though affects the base crit chance as well as the headshot multiplier, although as I said it does have a cap. And then both the invul phase and the crit buff durations are affected by duration mods. I use this quite often as a bit of an oh crap button. If I'm close to dying and I need to protect myself, hit 4, not only am I protected while I do whatever to heal, I am stronger afterwards because of that crit buff. It also has an augment for it, which in the interest of time I'm going to talk about in another video, but it's not one that I personally use, and I'll explain in that video once it's out, and I'm going to put in a link in the description below. So now we've looked at his abilities, how did I go about modding Harrow? Well, I've got full former on him. I couldn't depolarize the aura like I want to because it would just cause havoc with the build. However, we've got corrosive projection in the dash here. There's a whole bunch you could do with the aura. I think corrosive projection is the best all-rounder. You've got the armor on like Grenier and on Void, and you've got the robotics on the Corpus. So I find this to be sort of like the best all-rounder in terms of aura. You could always go with enemy radar, or you could go with energy siphon. You could go with loop detector, shield disruptor. Like, there's so many different options in the dash polarity. So I think it is the best all-round polarity as well. So I think this is definitely the one to go for. For survivability on Harrow, I got Vitality for health, Quick Thinking, which is going to allow us to basically use our energy as another health bar, which is really, really useful and gives us a lot of tank, especially when you combine it with Hunter Adrenaline. Hunter Adrenaline is going to give us more energy when we take damage, so combine that with your 3 and you're going to have maximum energy most of the time, so that's really, really useful. Plus this gives you a little bit extra damage on your companions, which is kind of nice. As a result of that, we got Prime Flow, which works really nicely with Quick Thinking to give you a massive HP bar. But also, because we're using Blind Rage, Intensify, and Power Drift, this is going to max out our... well, I say max out, it's going to give us a lot of power strength for, like, R2 and R3 and, like, basically all of our abilities, to be honest. Like, it means that we're also nuking our efficiency down to 45%, which actually means that our 4 costs 155 energy to cost. So if you remove Prime Flow, you can see we've actually only got 150 energy. So not having Prime Flow means we can't use our 4, which is not particularly useful. But we've also got Prime Continuity to affect all the durations of our abilities. And we've got Overextended, which is going to give us extra range on R1 and R3, which is really, really useful. The extra range on the 1 gives you some really nice crowd control for your team, but also the extra range on your 3 means that you can give out energy over a larger area. But you don't, 2 and 4 are not affected by range at all. They're affected by affinity range, which you can't actually affect other than with focus. But basically, this is just for your 3rd ability, and it's to give energy to the rest of your team, and it is very, very, very useful. But because this is a team frame and you rely a lot on killing to get your energy back, especially with your 3, I run Arcane Energize as one of my things, one of my arcanes, basically, it's because if you're in a group with a Sarin or an Equinox or something, and you're trying to shoot to kill, but things are getting killed so quickly you can't really do a lot, it's nice to have Arcane Energize there, just as a little bit of a backup to give you that boost of energy you need to get all your abilities going again, just in case. Because as well as you're not having, you know, all your teammates are killing very effectively, you're not taking as much damage either, which means Hunter Adrenaline doesn't have as much of an option, or much of a chance, sorry, to actually do what it needs to do. So it's very, very much like, it's just a backup, just in case things are not going your way. You might get into a group and you're doing all the killing, and therefore it's not a problem, and Arcane Energize becomes sort of a redundant thing, but there is definitely a use for it. I've definitely found I've been much more effective with it than I have without it, just in case you're in a group but they're really killing very quickly. And then we've also got Guardian, which is going to give us 20% chance for 600 armor on for 20 seconds, as well as the extra revive. Both of these will give you an extra revive. This will bring us up to 750 armor, which gives us a decent amount of damage reduction. So this, when combined with Prime Flow, Hunter Adrenaline, Vitality, and Quick Thinking, like this lot here, are all basically tanking mods, or tanky stuff. So it really does make Harrow very, very tanky. He is super, super good at giving out energy and health and protecting everyone, crit buffs and everything. But he can also take a silly amount of damage as well. He is very, very tanky. The second build, once again, Corrosive Projection. This is basically my solo build. I keep calling it my selfish build, but it's not really. Like, it is just a solo build. But we've got Power Drift and Blind Range. So as you see, there's no Intensify in here this time. And that is because we have no Overextended to drop our power strength down. So even with just these two and missing out on Intensify, we're at 214%, which is higher than the previous build. But as you can see, the range is lower, and that's because we're maxing out duration here. We're going with max narrow-minded and a prime continuity for a lot of duration. 254% means you don't have to actually cast very often at all. But the downside of narrow-minded is it reduces your ability range. As you can see, without stretch on here, we have 34% range. Now, it doesn't really matter for your 3, because you're not giving energy to anybody other than yourself anyway, because it's a solo build. But the problem is your 1, like your 1 feeds into your 2, and without stretch on there, I did a lot of testing, you basically had to be giving the enemy a hug before your 1 would do anything. So it just made your 1 completely useless. So having stretch in there really did help that quite a bit, and I would not drop that at all. And then basically it's the same tanky mods. Prime Flow, Vitality, Hunter Adrenaline, Quick Thinking, for as much tank as possible. Arcane Guardian once again, but this time we've got a difference in our in our second Arcane. So as you can see, I've got Grace in there right now, which gives us a 6% chance for health regeneration for 6 seconds. This is really nice to feed into the whole energy loop that you've got going on with Hunter Adrenaline and all that stuff. So it's really, really useful for feeding into that, but it just gives you also that much more tank as well. It's so tanky. But there's also 2 other options. You could also go with Arcane Barrier, which is here. 4% chance to instantly restore all of your shields. Now this actually feeds really nicely into your 2. 4% isn't a lot, and I've got to do way more testing on this one and also on Arcane Aegis, because it basically is going to feed into your second ability. Keeping your 2 up is really good. It's a huge output of DPS. The extra healing as well feeds into that energy loop that I've been talking about. It's really, really good. So keeping your 2 up is very, very useful. I haven't really worked out whether going Grace to keep your health up or going Barrier or Aegis. Aegis is basically Grace for your shields. 6% chance for 60 shields per second for 20 seconds. So, like you can see, that's basically like Arcane Grace for shields. I haven't really worked out which one I like more just yet. I've been going with Grace for that sort of energy loop, but I might switch out and go for Barrier or Aegis. Some pretty nice sort of options there. Or you can just ignore them. You can go with Arcane Energize for more energy, Arcane Fury for more melee damage when you get critical hits. That's not a bad one at all. You could also go like Arcane Rage if you're aiming for headshots anyway, because of your 3 and your 4. Headshot damage, 10% chance for 120% damage to rifles for 16 seconds. That's really, really useful as well. Or you could do with, like, if you're doing specific things, like if you're doing against, if you're doing Plague Star or something, having Arcane Resistance on there might be useful. Arcane Strike works really nicely to combine with your 2. There's a lot of options here, like, you could do with your Arcanes as well, and, but I personally would go with either Grace, Barrier, or Aegis. I'm going to be testing Barrier and Aegis a lot more in the near future. But I think Grace is pretty much the way I think I would probably go. In terms of, like, actually changing the build-up, I don't really have a lot of, like, things that I would remove. I don't have things that I would take off. I wouldn't remove Stretch. I wouldn't remove any of this. I wouldn't remove Hunter Adrenaline. I think it's too useful. There are a lot of people that would say that they can't do Harrow without Natural Talent. Now, Natural Talent is really, really good. It speeds up the casting of his 4 by... his 3, but, well, all of his abilities, but his 3 in particular, it will charge up way quicker, so you've got less downtime on the ability, like, your ability to fight, basically. So you could use Natural Talent in there as well. It's one of those things that, like, it's very, very difficult to fit anything in there. Like, you've also got Speed Drift for casting speed as well as the sprint speed. Which technically, I mean, you could put up here. You could put that into the Exilus. Lose a little bit of strength, but you will gain the sprint speed and a little bit extra casting speed. So that's also an option. But I don't know. I just take the hit on my casting speed personally, because of the crazy duration. Like, even the duration on the first build, it's good enough where you're not going to be casting that often anyway. So I don't mind taking the 10 seconds. The 5-10 seconds it takes to charge up my 3 to, yeah, I don't mind taking that time, so it really doesn't bother me that much, but it's an option if you do want to change it out. So after all of that, what do I think of Harrow? Do I think he's worth the farm and the former to go and get him where you want? And yes I do. He is absolutely incredible. This is one of the best things I like about Warframe. Going back after some time, rediscovering just how good he is. It actually brings new life to the game for me. When stuff feels like it's getting stale and boring and samey, try something you've not used in ages, and you might have that fun come back again, and that is exactly what happened with me. Used correctly, Harrow can provide a huge boost in damage output for himself, but also tons of consistent healing and energy for the team, plus crit buffs to boost everyone else's damage output, as well as making everyone invincible for a short amount of times. Quite frankly, he's one of the best support frames out there for me, without question. The reload buff from his 2 makes long reload weapon like Sobek, Supras, and the Strun Wraith so much nicer. The damage output from a Strun Wraith with the buff up is incredible. And then the fire rate and reload speed combined makes bows work insanely well, to the point where I would call him the master of bows. Using the Daikyu with him was a ton of fun, and something I found that I super enjoyed. I mean, stuff that even has terrible crit chances, stuff like the new core, which has almost no crit whatsoever, but a huge crit multiplier. Use it with Harrow, and you have a decent amount of crit, and now you have a crazy crit multiplier as well. The new core does silly damage if you combine it with Harrow, and it is a ton of fun too. A couple of handy hints I found when using Harrow is if you're finding enemies are doing a lot of damage and you never really have much shield to sacrifice for your 2 to get some duration on it, hit your 4 to be invulnerable. Then use your 1 to regen a ton of shield, but because you're invulnerable, you'll get the shield, but they can't do any damage to you, and then use your 2. Combining the invul phase to regen your thorough energy too on your 3 also means that basically you've refreshed everything at once whilst you're completely invincible. I find it super easy to make sure all your abilities are, and basically you've got all your abilities going again, without the enemies being a pain in the backside and make you have to worry about them too. Weapon wise, you can go for almost anything really. However, there's one weapon I found to be incredible with him, and that is the Arcaplasmor. The ease at which you get headshots just by aiming at roughly head height makes it ideal for Harrow's 3. And there are very few things that are as satisfying as seeing you shoot a Plasmor shot and the whole right side of the screen lights up telling you how many headshots you got and your energy bar go immediately empty to immediately full. Like, Harrow's kit is kind of easy to understand, but it does take quite a bit of management to get the most out of him. Constantly keeping an eye on your ability timers, your teammates' health, your positioning, your own energy management. It is a very involved playstyle, but once you master him, you have, in my opinion, one of the best designed and one of the best support Warframes in the game. He brings a lot to a team, and I've been having tons and tons of fun playing him recently. He is worth the farm and worth investing the former in and the time to learn him. He really is fantastic. One of my favourite frames by far. So I hope you enjoy my look at Harrow. Feel free to post your own tips for him in the comments below. Plus any feedback on the video is welcome. Hopefully soon we're going to have an update to deal with. So there's going to be a lot of content coming. And I might also have something slightly surprising coming in the next few days. But for now, many thanks for watching. And I shall catch you in the next video.